Okay guys, welcome in a new video uh, in which I'm gonna review Doom 64 on Nintendo Switch. Um, Doom 64 was a game released in 1996, I believe, on Nintendo 64. And of course this review will be about Nintendo Switch version, and not Nintendo 64, but Nintendo Switch. Um, I have to say that I've got some sort of mixed feelings about this game. That's the first time I'm actually finishing the game, and I have to say that it's weird. Not in a negative way, in a more than positive way, but the game is quite weird. Of course, it's totally different than the first or the second Doom game released on PC in 1993 and 1994. Is it wrong that the game is different? And what do I mean by saying different? The Doom 64, obviously. If you recall the very first Doom release on PC or the second Doom, you probably remember the music. For instance, let's start with the audio side of the game, with the sounds. The sounds are very similar. Some of them are practically the same as in first or second Doom on PC, from the PC, but there are some much differences, especially in music. The first Doom, as you know, it had some sort of a hard rock music, even metal, I would say, combined with some sort of a science fiction synth. In this case, we've got practically an ambient. In Doom 64, you don't really have music like in the first or the second Doom, where the music was practically, like I said, it was a mix of hard rock, metal, synth, and some sort of other types of music, MIDI music, which were available in 90s, which is 30 years ago in most of the games released between years 1992 and 1996. Because most of these games, the music sounds quite similar. It's not the same. Don't get me wrong. It's not the same. I mean, the style of music. You get me. Every era has some sort of a style in which the music has been generated, composed. In 80s have their own definitely very nice style, but the same thing with 90s and the 2000 era. So if you listen to a song, you basically more or less know in which decade the song has been made. The same thing in case of the games, right? If you listen to the music from Blackstone, Descent, Rise of the Triad, Duke Nukem 3D, Redneck Rampage, Shadow Warrior Blood, or Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom, the first Doom and the second Doom, and then you're probably gonna see some similarities in music, but we will not be speaking about this. In Doom 64, basically, you've got some sort of a ambient music. It's more something like that. Is it wrong? I wouldn't say it's wrong. It's totally different than the first or the second Doom. The whole atmosphere, the feeling in which when you explore the levels and you fight the demons, you're gonna notice that there are many things different than in the first and the second Doom. The textures are different, graphics are different. The way the doors are made, or the computers on the walls, some sort of elevators, machines, all the elements, textures on the floor, on the ceiling, on the walls. The whole art style of the game is different than in case of the first or the second Doom, which makes me thinking that I'm not really pretty sure why did they call this game Doom, because let's be honest, a zombie soldier or pinky demon are not. These are elements which are not enough to call a game Doom. But then here you go. They made a Doom 64 because obviously it was supposed to be a yes, it's me holding the phone here. Hello. So yeah, that's the thing. It's from my point of view. Oh, sorry, just lost the plot for a second. From my point of view, the music is okay, the atmosphere of the game is really fine, but it doesn't really feel like Doom at all. Is it good or bad? Well, you can answer that question yourself. Is it good or bad that the game called Doom is totally different than any other Doom game? But then, if we look at the third Doom installment, which has been released in 2004, and I also reviewed it on my channel, then you're gonna notice that the third Doom was also much different than the first and the second. But even though it was more like a horror game, and we didn't really have a proper music in the third Doom because they replaced the music with massive amounts of sounds coming from the environment. So basically, in my opinion, the third Doom, I believe that the third Doom was closer to the original one, to the first original one than Doom 64. But then, who said that another Doom game should be actually similar to the previous Doom game, right? Nobody said it has to be like that. If they wanted to create a Doom, the first Doom, they would just probably remake the first Doom for Nintendo 64, right? I believe that somehow they tried a different approach. They tried a different approach. I'm not sure why this phone is losing... Okay, maybe that now it's gonna be better a little bit. Nobody said that the Doom 64 was supposed to be the same as the first or the second Doom, or even if we look at the Doom released on PlayStation, the first PlayStation, we're gonna notice that it was also different than the Doom released on the PC, right? The first Doom released on the PC. So these games were every single game. After Doom 2, every single Doom, another Doom was quite different than, or totally different than the first or the second. So I think it's quite unfair for me to say that Doom 64 is worse than the first or second Doom. Because it's not the same. Obviously it's not the same because it shouldn't be the same. That is why they called it Doom 64. That is why they tried, because they tried different approach. They wanted to see what will happen if the game placed in the Doom universe will be more similar to the Quake, the first Quake. I think that the Doom 64 was somehow combination of the first Quake and the first Doom and the second Doom as well, which was supposed to remind Quake more than the Doom. So the people playing on Nintendo 64, they will get prepared for the Quake 64, right? Doom 64 was supposed to, in my opinion, it was supposed to prepare. It wasn't supposed to be a success or something. It was supposed to prepare the Nintendo 64 players to meet the Quake 64. Obviously, on Nintendo Switch, we don't have Quake 64 because it's not necessary to do it. Quake 64 was practically the same as the first Quake released on the PC. So there wasn't, I think there wasn't much differences between these games, but I'm not really sure. But for 100%, the difference between the Quake on, oh shit, man, sorry for that. I believe that the first, oh come on, bastard. That's what I hate. What I hate about Nintendo 64 is the fact that he's practically oh, and of course you need to have internet connection. Yes, because it's asking for internet connection just to launch the game. But I don't have internet connection at the house I'm living now. So, like I said, there were huge differences between Doom 64 and the first and the second Doom. But I don't think there were differences like that between Quake 64 and the first Quake released on PC originally. So, so that's why I think that there is a Quake game for a Nintendo Switch console, which is really great port. I love it. I love it. But we're gonna review it other times. Now we're reviewing the Doom 64 graphically. So like I said, I told you about the music, which is more like an ambient. Graphically, it looks good, in my opinion. Obviously, in 1996, when it appeared on Nintendo 64, it looked really great. At that time, PCs were a little bit behind the Nintendo 64. Saying a little bit means a lot. Why? Because in 1996, of course, we have 3D accelerators which appeared on PC, and it was, I think, late 1996. Most of the people weren't really interested in these due to the very high prices in the beginning when it appeared. We had like a 3DFX Voodoo or Riva, I think Matrox or something like that. There were some sort of 3D accelerators. The main task of 3D accelerator was to blend the pixels, because as you know, in 1994, 3, 5, most of the games on PC or first PlayStation, they had pixels. The higher resolution was, the smaller pixels were as well. They weren't that visible, especially on monitors which you could get at that time in the middle 90s. So let's say if you set the resolution 320 on 200 on PC, then obviously you had some sort of a big pixels. But then in 640 on 480, the graphics were a lot better, not even to mention about 800 on 600, because that was total space, and most of the PCs were not capable of running the new games in these resolutions. Even running the game in Super VGA, Super VGA, SVGA, which is 640 on 480, launching the games on this resolution was a super achievement, because you had to have a very strong PC for that. And when the 3D accelerators came into life and people started buying them, especially in 1997, when these prices went down and people started buying more and more, especially of 3DFX Voodoo, those pixels practically disappeared. They're being blended into something which looked a lot better, in my opinion, at least from my point of view. Of course, you had some sort of hardcore players which used to say, it's not the same as it was, I prefer the software. Yes, so they had a chance to turn the graphics into the software mode with pixels. But I personally, when I played the Quake 2, I didn't like to have the pixels. I was fed up with the pixels. I wanted something new. And that's why I did love to play on hardware mode, which allowed you to use the 3D accelerators. Especially the lighting was a lot better than in case of the software mode. And obviously on Nintendo 64, it was a constant super hardware mode. Nintendo 64 was 3D accelerated. The graphics were 3D accelerated. Doesn't matter if it was a Mario 64 or Shadows of the Empire, outstanding game. Or even better, Turok, Dinosaur Hunter, yes. All these games released on Nintendo 64, Perfect Dark as well, they were 3D accelerated. So like I said, that was the main advantage of Nintendo 64, and obviously a smooth, I think 60 frame graphics or 50 frames. I'm not really sure. I won't be telling you how many frames were on Nintendo 64 because I'm not sure. But it was fully 3D accelerated. The graphics were just outstanding. And being a PC player at the end of 1996, beginning of 1997, made me very jealous about this console because the graphics were outstanding. And when I was looking at the screenshots in the Polish gaming magazines, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, right? It was just unbelievable. And we had all sorts of games, not only Doom 64, we had Hexen 64, there was Duke Nukem 64. All these games had one major difference between the PC version and Nintendo 64. In PC version, obviously, you could have a resolution of 800 on 600, yes, but you didn't have possibility to turn the hardware mode, which was blending the pixels, right? The graphics were 3D accelerated with blended pixels. You didn't have that chance in case of PC, at least in the beginning of 1996 or 1997. But on Nintendo 64s, all these graphics were blended. These textures, there was no pixels. Doesn't matter if it was Hexen or Duke Nukem, Quake, Doom. All these games were 3D accelerated and it looked just outstanding. Yeah, levels. I do like the level design on Doom 64. It reminds me more the first Doom than the second one, if you're asking me. But like I said a couple of minutes ago, it reminds me a Quake more than the Doom. So it's not only the atmosphere, the music, the graphics, which remind me of Quake when playing Doom 64. Another thing which reminds me about Quake, it's also the level design. It's very, very similar in my opinion. It's some sort of a mix between the first Doom and the first Quake. What else? Difficulty level is not that bad. On the lowest difficulty, it is possible to finish the game without any issues, major issues. You can save the game at any time if you want, even when you're fighting with the bosses. But my major problem, and the only problem I have about this game, if we speak about difficulty, is the last boss, which is so freaking difficult that I had to use the cheat codes. I had to use the internet to look for the cheat codes, which gives you possibility of unlocking another option in option menu called features. And the features obviously allow you to use invulnerability or infinite ammo, all weapons, all keys, and so on, right? So the cheats, obviously you can cheat in the game. That's the only reason why I finished the game, by killing the last boss. Before meeting the last boss, I didn't have any issues playing on the lowest difficulty. So I believe that all the other difficulties are quite similar. They're quite balanced, I believe. The weapons. I love the weapons in this game. These are Doom weapons, of course. There, like I said, there's also similarities between Doom 64 and the first Quake. Again, it's also about the weapons. If you look at the double shotgun, or if you look at the pump action shotgun, they're quite similar to Quake. But in my opinion, they look better. They look better because they're not 3D. These are not 3D models. These are sprites, 2D sprites. And personally, I'm a bigger fan of 2D sprites than 3D models, especially the early 3D models from 1996 and 1997 and 1998 as well were shit. Honestly, shit. And practically the only game which I really did love and enjoy, and it had the 3D models of guns and weapons and characters as well, was a game released on PC in 1998, and it was called Shogo Mobile Armor Division, created by the Monolith, the same company which created also the Blood, the first, second Blood, and No One Lives Forever series. And also the Fear games. Fear. Yeah, games called the FPS shooters, first person shooters called Fear. And I think they made Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Yeah. So, do I recommend Doom 64? Do I recommend Doom 64? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I believe that the game is... It's not as good as the first and the second Doom, let's be honest. And I'm not going to lie to you about that. It's not even as great as the third Doom. But is it worth of its price? Yes, it is. Yes, it is worth to play Doom 64. It is worth to have it in your... among all your other games which you have on your console. I believe that at this point, in my opinion, the best port of the old game, the old shooters, which has been released on Nintendo Switch, from my point of view, it's Quake, the first Quake. Why is it first Quake? I'm not going to tell you now. I will tell you when the time comes, when the special time comes. And at this point, I can easily recommend you the Doom 64. In my opinion, it's a game where, if you love the first-person shooters, you should grab it. You have to grab it and you have to play it. So, thanks for watching and goodbye.